Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Namo Namaha, Jai Ganesha. Please visit our website at classicalyoga.org, and there is a donate button if you would like to help us out. And please stand up for the Hindu, yoga, religious, spiritual, scientific, philosophical lifestyle. Today's message, you're going to find this one very interesting, especially those of you that have listened to our many, many podcasts and how we stick up for the Hindu yoga dharma. And you know, as Hindus, it's important that we at least recognize the other religions of the world out there and do our Purva Paksha, means study from their point of view, see what they mean, what they believe. So today's podcast, the message of the cross. I am sure that most of you are familiar with this phrase, the message of the cross. That's all about Christianity. And very typically you'll hear evangelists, especially those like Jimmy Swaggart, this is their key aphorism, the message of the cross. And without that, really, there is no Christianity. And what does that mean? That means that Christianity is the basic belief that Jesus was killed on a cross and then rose again. And he was killed on that cross for the sins of the whole world. This is the message of the cross. And those that believe in Jesus will be saved. Those that don't, well, they won't be saved, to say the least. So is this not basically the age-old dichotomy of good and evil, right and wrong? Now, I was listening to a podcast by Jordan Peterson, and he shared what many Christians share in this message of the cross, that this is also about an unjust suffering. In other words, he was saying that for all of us in life, and this is true, we will all suffer to one degree or another, and sometimes for good reason, and sometimes in an unjust way. Sometimes we just get picked on, if you will, simply by the bullies of life, or just an unjust sentence. How many times have we seen where someone was unjustly convicted and spent 30, 40 years in jail before they were released? Wow. So the point of that is that when we all suffer, that we just have to man up, woman up, human up, and just deal with it. Go with it. Because realize that life is about joy and sorrow in the material world. Obviously, at some point we figure out that living a more ethical life produces more joy and less sorrow and suffering. Hence the important purpose of religion in general, which should importantly deal with our everyday life. Yeah, we can learn from the past and we can look to a future, but if we get stuck in the past and an imaginary future and forget to live in the moment, what is the point? Life itself, and certainly religion, should be about living a basically rather successful and peaceful, comforting life in this very moment. And accept the trials and tribulations that come to us, because there really is no other alternative except to end our life. In which case, as we as Hindus believe, we just have to do it all over again. So let's look at the cross. And the cross is not really an addition sign. They're two different symbols, aren't they? Even though there is a Greek cross that is just like the plus sign or the addition sign, the Christian cross is a longer vertical line. And is it not a sword, actually? Yes. If you look at the old knights, their sword was basically the Christian cross, onward Christian soldiers. So this cross did become a sword that went around the world, attempting to convert all to Christianity by peace or sometimes by the sword. So if we look at the cross as the plus sign or the addition sign, then it becomes a choice. Which way to go in life? When we approach a crossroads, choosing goodness, badness, if you will, joy, sorrow, crime, service, philanthropy. The choice is up to us. There's an interesting movie, Crossroads, with the Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio. And it's basically, again, about good and evil, making a deal with Satan, the devil. In other words, in life itself, in general, we all come to many crossroads in our life when we have to choose our direction, which way to go. Do we do what's right? Or do we try to get away with something and do what's wrong? And the theme of this movie, Crossroads, was about learning to play the blues. And most of you know that's a very heartfelt type of music that perhaps originated in the South in America. And it's about a blues harmonica player, Willie Brown, and then Ralph Macchio plays a guitar player who was trained in classical guitar music, and then he wanted to desperately learn to play the blues. So they go on a road trip, and the point is that Willie Brown is trying to teach him that you'll never play the blues until you suffer. So at one point he finds a girlfriend and then loses her, and it's then when he learns to play the blues on his guitar, having suffered. So again, is this not life? As we go through the ups and downs of life, the joys and the sorrows, the sukha dukkha, the raga, the vesha, the suffering helps to bring out compassion. Remember, it's through passion that we develop compassion. Having suffered a little bit, we know, or a lot, we know what it is when another is suffering. So it's interesting that the blues is often associated with people of color, if you will, black people, who truly suffered under slavery. And so in their time off, they would get around and sing together and sing these blues songs. Heartfelt feelings of suffering, anguish, which brought the community together. So it's very interesting that in the Hindu Yoga Dharma, the fifth chakra at the throat, Visuddha chakra, is the chakra with the color blue. And this is associated with Mahadeva Shiva as Nilkanta, the blue-throated one, who, in a mythological story, drank the poison of life. In other words, sometimes we need to sacrifice for others and just deal with it. Talk about the unjust suffering of Jesus on the cross. So sometimes we have to just deal with it and suck it up, swallow it. It's interesting, it is at the throat that we cough. Purification, we cough up any sickness that's within us, perhaps. As we're getting ready to enter into the deity head, if you will, the Visuddha chakra, that narrow channel of purification that's absolutely necessary to get into the expanded view of the head, of the Ajna chakra and the Sahasrara chakra, of prajna, spiritual perception, on into the depths of enlightenment. War and peace, it's a game we play, the dance of duality. But at death's door, it's all gone, they say. Listen to our podcast on the divine dance of duality, because that's his life. We're born into this world of multiplicity, everything in its opposite. And through our life, we'll come to many crossroads where we have to choose which way to go. And life will put these tests before us. And then there are others who want to be very proactive and really test themselves. It's not a coincidence that if you look at the many mystics of the world, and monks, shamans, yogis, etc., they live very humble lives. They often go off and basically disappear. Think for a moment in the biblical story. And again, we need to learn from the different religions of the world and learn what is good about them, and also recognize what is illogical or makes no sense at all. But in the story of Jesus, he spends 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. Try that sometime. But something interesting, since we mentioned Jesus, remember that there apparently was a Jewish rabbi named Yeshua who lived some 2,000 years ago and was killed on a cross, and basically that's it. It was after the fact that people changed his name to Jesus and his religion to Christianity. Very interesting. This kind of theft. They came to a crossroads. Do we remain Jewish or do we create something new? Interesting. So these mystics, the world over, many of them have made a conscious choice. Look at the Buddha. He was a prince. He made a conscious choice to put himself under severe, what we would call tapas or sadhana, severe discipline, living off in the forest by himself, so that we can learn truly about ourselves, what we're made of on the inside. And nobody can do this for us. This is something that we have to do voluntarily. And then they always come out from that experience with a deep, deep insight, introspection, that may then become written down as scriptures, etc. This is really a very common occurrence, that these mystics go deep within, disappear for a while, and some obviously disappear and you're never heard from again. But some come back, and then other people may pervert the message by not realizing that they need to do exactly what that mystic did. So in other words, as many have said before, these mystics may point the way to these deeper realizations, but many people are more comfortable with sucking the finger of the prophet, if you will, rather than following the way prescribed. How many, in any religion, but Christianity, for example, how many are willing to take no thought for tomorrow and not care about any earthly treasures? How many in today's so-called yoga movement have or are willing to renounce everything and go off into the forest and just live? Interesting. Because that is the life of a true yogi or yogini. They disappear. They leave the material world. But again, because so few are able to do those intense disciplines, that we have so much confusion in the religious realm. As Yogaswami, a mystic from Sri Lanka, said, because so few are unwilling to undergo serious tapas and sadhana, there's so much untruth being delivered to a bewildered world. The blind and the blind in a blind dance shuffle. That's today's yoga. The practice is blind. The teachers are blind and the students are blind. The blind and the blind in a blind dance shuffle. So in life in general, there's a time to fight and there's a time not to fight. There's a time to be very assertive, aggressive, and there's a time to be more passive. And you find this in all the mystics as well, and the scriptures around the world. So in the same Christian New Testament and the quote-unquote Old Testament, obviously which they stole from the Jews, renaming the Torah the Old Testament, you find this dichotomy of a peaceful, loving Yahweh, or later God, and a peaceful, loving Jesus, but also one who not only turns the other cheek, but also says, take up your arms and follow me. The same Yeshua, i.e. Jesus, can say, bless those that curse you, and then go in and knock over all the tables of the money changers. So this is life when we come to the crossroads, when we have to bear the many crosses in life and decide which way to go. Direction is everything. In the Hindu Yoga Dharma, we have very pacifist yogis, yoginis. You have Gandhi, obviously, the epitome of the pacifist. Whatever you think of him, perhaps he took his pacifism way too far, taking ahimsa too far, because there's a time to speak up. For in the Hindu Yoga Dharma, you also have the battles in the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata. So for all of us, we all need to come to these crossroads in our life and make our decisions. What do we do? Well, we have no choice, basically, unless we decide to end our lives. We have no choice but to live life. Jump in. welcome the challenges, welcome the suffering that comes as well as the joy, as we eventually all learn to play the blues, if you will, through this purification process. Every athlete who reaches an elite status knows the suffering that they went through and the subsequent joy, too, of success. The games of life. This is what Hindus call the Leela, the play or the Maya, the back and forth, the Sada Lolahara of life as we swing from one side to the other, eventually reaching a balance in the middle, a sattvic equilibrium balance. So there's a message of the crossroads of life that you won't get in a Christian church, because their message is that there's only one way. Is there one way? Sometimes. Are there many ways? Well, obviously. But this is where the choice is up to us as we come to the many crossroads of our life. Nobody can live your life for you. Enjoy the journey. But take heart, because there are some traditional, classical, if you will, approaches to life. Certainly if we view life from a scientific point of view, and in a mature understanding of the Hindu Dharma, and maybe other religions also. Remember, there's many, many religions in the world. And each one is a way. They're not the way, or they're not a universal way for everybody. So in the Hindu Yoga Dharma, we do look at some classical approaches to life, which are really based in science, because science is a classical understanding, for example, of the dynamics of life, gravity, electricity, magnetism, step by step by step. The laws of motion, which Hindus understand as tamas, rajas, and sattva. Inertia, acceleration, action, reaction, all producing a sense of equilibrium. So there are some classical understandings of life. So back to the movie again, Crossroads, because it's very interesting if you watch this. It's, again, about a contract with the devil, if you will. And Willie Brown had made such a contract, and that's why he became such a proficient harmonica player, harp player, blues player. But there was also at the end a guitarist who had made a deal with the devil. And Ralph Macchio, as an aspiring blues guitar player, had a scene where he confronted this guitar player who was really magnificent because he'd made a deal with the devil. But remember that Ralph was trained initially in classical music. So at the end scene, it's really quite exciting because Ralph plays classical music, and to which the other guitar player really couldn't match him. And so in the end, it was the classical approach that won. So that's why we actually call our ashram the Classical Yoga Hindu Academy. There are some classical approaches here in life itself. So for example, we use an acronym EDME. In general, in life, it should be rational, logical, to consider that, first and foremost, we need to have some kind of an ethical code of conduct to live our life. If we want to live our life and stay out of trouble, stay out of jail, if you will, we have to have a certain ethical code of conduct. And then we must exert full-on devotion to our task at hand, whether that be a relationship, a job, a hobby, a sport, a religion, full-on devotion. And then continue and deepen that into intense concentration, which is really the meaning of the word meditation. And if we keep up this classic process, no matter what you're doing in life, whether it's secular or in the religious realm, just try to be ethical and honest. Exert full-on devotion, full-on concentration. Keep repeating that circular process, or spiraling actually. And one will achieve a more or less enlightened life. That word meaning that in light we're meant to be. In other words, we feel more buoyant, energized, as opposed to depressed and sad and down and defeated. And the inner epiphanies, if you will, inner revelations, the inner insights that we get in life. So here's a classical process in life: ethics, devotion, meditation to enlightenment. ED, which is short for education, EDME. We can say to ourselves, EDME. Now, this is life in general. You can find it certainly played out in all the religions of the world. They have their ethical codes of conduct, their devotions, and then it's up to the individual to increase their concentration, their meditative states of being, if you will. Keeping up the process, they have achieved a more or less enlightened state of being. So, this is understanding life and religion in general, but now the important understanding of specifics. For it is Hindus that view this process as karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga, respectively. Basically, in this case, Hindu ethics, karma yoga, Hindu devotions, bhakti yoga, Hindu meditations or contemplations, raja yoga, and the inner study of enlightenment, and also the outer study, jnana yoga, karma, bhakti, raja, jnana. These are the four classic yogas that make up the Hindu dharma, Hinduism, the Hindu religion. So here's where we come to a very important crossroads for many, many people today who have heard the word yoga. Classically, what do you do when you hear a word, you see a word, yoga? Well, first of all, you figure out what language is that. Yoga is a Sanskrit word, and Sanskrit is, by definition, the ancient Arya, another confused word. It means profoundly noble. The ancient Arya, or noble language of the Hindus. It's a religious language. Therefore, the many words that we hear today, yoga, mantra, karma, chakras, kundalini, guru, swami, these are all Sanskrit Hindu words. And Tamil as well. Tamil and Sanskrit are equally ancient languages. So it's all about the Hindu religion if one is honest. And this word yoga, interestingly enough, has nothing to do with the physical body per se. Wow. Talk about a very unclassical approach to life is when we simply use words and have no idea what we're saying. Yoga is a Sanskrit Hindu word, and it means yuj atman brahmancha, to yoke yuj, Y-O-K-E, to your inner essence, which Hindus call the Atmana, and then a greater source, which Hindus call Brahman. And to understand more deeply about this, listen to many of our other podcasts, and you'll see that already you're deep, deep, deep into Hinduism. And obviously, since yoga is all about the Hindu religion, it should honestly, ethically, and classically be taught by a Hindu. Interesting. So many have come to a crossroads when they see something like yoga, for example, and they've chosen to do the wrong thing. Divorce it from Hinduism, become so-called professional certified yoga teachers, instead of doing the right thing, which would be to recognize that this is all about the Hindu religion. And then if one chooses to study Hinduism, fine. If not, fine too. But if one ever wants to become a teacher, in general in anything in life, and certainly in the religions of the world, if one wants to become a teacher, they must first and foremost, classically, honestly, ethically, sanely, first become a member of that religion, study, and then maybe teach. Here's a primal crossroad for many of you out there. What direction are you going to choose? Again, the choice is up to you.